Hi, and welcome to Talking Cars. I'm Jennifer Stockberger.
I'm Emily Thomas.
And I'm Alex Nizick.
So I'm very happy. This is the first time I've been at the table, and it makes me very happy. It's so much easier and nicer to be at the table with everybody. So first up this week is our first impressions of the 2023 Kia Niro hybrid. So Alex will get into that. And rather than a giant wholesale redesign on this car, I would call it more of a series of tweaks. Does that sound right?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah. Alex, give us a rundown of the tweaks.
Yeah, so it's still going to be offered in the hybrid, plug-in hybrid, electric, kind of that trio of powertrains. So there's no gas-only version, essentially, right? So just like the last one. And it's kind of moving to a platform that is shared with the Elantra. So it actually has a lot of similarities with the Elantra. But on paper, you're absolutely right. It looks very similar to the outgoing Niro. It's a little bigger in some dimensions, but effectively the same size. The powertrain's very similar. It's still 139 horsepower, little four-cylinder with a six-speed DCT. So all these things are very similar.
Dual clutch transmission.
Yes, the dual clutch transmission. But they've improved the efficiency. So I think the big thing about this car is the fact that it's rated for, if you get the 16-inch wheels like we have, 53 miles per gallon combined.
Which is huge right now.
Oh
Huge.
my gosh.
Yeah. So it's kind of like a Prius without being a Prius shape or look.
I actually played a game. So I go, they have a screen, in your trip computer where it'll calculate your average miles per gallon. So I put it on, reset it, and turn it off because one of my loops is like this varied stop and go, secondary highway loop that I do. And at the end, I open it up and see what I got. I have 54 miles per gallon average.
I think I saw 53.
Wow. I can get around the 139 horsepower because this is no rocket by any means.
That is the downside.
That is the downside. But at 54 miles per gallon, it's certainly adequate. Of course, that was what I got in my little loop. We'll do obviously our formal miles per gallon city highway combined. But for me, I was pretty impressed. And again, I hide it because I want to do it normally. I don't want to try to optimize it. Just drive normal and see what happens.
Yeah, I always reset them, and especially on cars like this, but I do keep it there. So I'm always watching it. But
hide
you're right.
it. See what happens.
It is worth noting that even though 53 is amazing, if you get a higher trim, it comes with larger wheels and it kind of impacts it a decent amount. It's rated at 49. So you lose a little bit, but still 49 miles per gallon is pretty amazing.
Where's Ryan? We can talk about rolling resistance and what, but anyway.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of a weird little vehicle in some ways, almost like a shape-shifting in terms of its genre. If you want to put it into one of these boxes, it's a cliche, but it's a tall hatchback, really.
Right.
They might advertise it as an SUV, but really it's like the floor height is that of a car. The wheels are the size of a car, rides like a car, drives like a car, but then they almost just took the top of it and pulled it upwards a little bit. So you sit a little taller, you have a little more cargo room.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you say tall, I was like, is it though? Because it did feel tall.
Right.
But I see what you mean, that they made the height of the vehicle taller perhaps, but it still felt pretty low.
It is.
Yeah,
I think, and if you're expecting something like a CRV or a Kia Sportage where that seat is really elevated, you just kind of slide in. It's really not that. You're still kind of falling down into the seat. It's a pretty low car.
Yeah. And I had to raise the seat quite a bit.
Yeah, I had that. And the other thing, which it may look a bit SUV-ish, there is no all-wheel drive option for the Niro. So
which is kind of disappointing.
It's kind of disappointing. I put it in, it's almost a be careful, like buyer beware, because it really does look like a small SUV. I remember talking about the Toyota CHR the same way. Yeah. There was no all-wheel drive for that car either. It's just a front-wheel drive platform. So just a caution there if it's something you need. Right. How did you like it inside, driving, etc.?
It wasn't bad. It was just like kind of unremarkable, if that's okay to say. I took it around the track. I went on the rec road. So it was kind of nice to experience it on different road textures and stuff. But I was kind of like, it's okay. It wasn't particularly thrilling. It wasn't a rocket ship for sure. Right. But it was competent. It did what it was supposed to do. And in terms of like my own comfort level in the vehicle, everything was easily accessible for me to like change options and stuff. Like, I don't know, whoever was in there before me had like, it was probably Monty because the AC was like, it was like so cold in the car. Yeah. I'm always freezing when I get into a car after him. But it was easy enough for me to make those adjustments while I was driving because the controls are super easy to use. It's all like regular touch, like regular hard buttons. So I wasn't having to like play that weird game of like, I wonder what this does, or, you know, anything like
Except
that.
for that switching panel. I have a story about that.
I have a story about that too.
You want to go first?
So again, as you've heard many times, we're all about give me the hard button.
Yeah.
Give me the hard button that I can do by feel and look at, but don't make the hard button do two things.
Right.
So you can tell your story and how it works and why it's frustrating. Yeah.
They're like propagating this bar that's below the screen down all their models. So we saw it, I think, on the EV6 first, the electric Kia that we tested, and we saw it in the Sportage, and here it is showing up in the Niro. It's this long horizontal bar with all the controls and a couple knobs, which is great. But the problem with it is that there's one little button, and when you press it, it switches it from controlling the climate system to like the audio navigation, that type of thing. So over the weekend, my wife, Allie, and I are going to a new restaurant that we're not really sure where it is. And it's in this like kind of narrow road, a tight driveway, whatever. So I'm trying to figure out where I'm supposed to turn in. And we had music playing, and I go to turn down the volume so that I can focus. And I crank the temperature down to like 60, and I'm getting frustrated trying to do everything. And she's like, can't you just turn the volume down like you normally do, or use the switch where it always is? And I'm like, it's not there. So it's a little frustrating. I mean, it's not the end of the world.
That's where the steering wheel button comes in play.
I know. And I would make that argument, but in that moment where you're kind of a little flustered, right? Trying to just get off the road.
You didn't just start like stabbing it.
I didn't, but I should have.
Right. And that's what I was doing is, I mean, yeah, they have the little toggle, but to me, it defeats the whole purpose of having the hard knob. You do it so you can do it a little bit tactile, but now you have to look and see what mode you're in for the whole bar, not just that.
Yep.
So I agree. I was a little frustrated by that. But in general, to Emily's point, we're usually pleased with how Hyundai Kia, traditional shifter, great icons on the screen. Again, my old lady eyes. I like, having all of that
accessible. You're not wearing your reading glasses when you drive?
No, on and off like I do here. But one thing, and I don't know if either of you, I was really kind of taken aback, and I think experienced it in the original of the road noise. It's got a really high volume, and then I always say it's a rumble road noise. I experienced it on both asphalt, which is traditionally quieter than concrete, but it's on both really high volume. Most of the time for me, a low-pitched rumble is not so annoying as like a high-pitched whine, but this volume was so much, and then when you needed power, the engine noise came in on top of it. I was turning up, not easily turning up the audio volume. So I thought it was quite noisy. I want my hybrid to be quiet. This was not quiet. I don't know.
I did feel that, especially when I was coming around the handling circuit. And I was like, I wonder what the guys are going to say when it comes to like the noise evaluation. Because I feel like sometimes too, my perception of noise is different than the evaluation that is done. I don't know if I'm just like more sensitive. My husband will tell you I'm more sensitive to sound, but
you hear everything.
Yeah. But I was curious. I'm glad to hear you say that because I'm like, okay, maybe I'm just not out there with
No, it's definitely on the noisier side.
Yeah.
I thought the powertrain was decently quiet. I mean, when you have to rev it out, it gets a little kind of like
in general.
grumbly.
But again, that's all you hear is tire and road noise.
Yeah.
So,
Like most cars are pretty well sealed to the outside in terms of like door sealing, window sealing. So you're not hearing a lot of that, but absolutely that road noise and maybe some of it from the low rolling resistance tires are just,
maybe
coming through more. But
maybe that was a compromise. But anyway, and again, the good thing is it's probably fixable with a quieter tire to some degree. Obviously, the noise dampening isn't great either, but anyway. So and tweaks, to your point, efficiencies in all three powertrains. Hybrid, plug-in hybrid, gets a little bit longer electric-only range for the plug-in, 7 miles more. The Niro EV, which we will be purchasing. So we have the hybrid. We will get the Niro EV, according to Gabe. A little further range, 253 up from 239. So again, little tweaks for everything. The only thing noticeable, and they actually talk about it a lot, is the boomerang-shaped taillight. So you'll know a 2023 Niro EV because of the boomerang-shaped taillight. I always say, too, when I work on that best cars for young drivers. It was reliable, at least up through the 22 model. This is probably a good car for a young driver. Great fuel economy, not too fast, but not too slow.
Yeah.
You know, reasonable
Comes with-
price.
Right.
Yeah.
Good safety
Spacious,
systems.
yep.
And the hatchback. Be it
Right.
whether they make it look like an SUV or a wagon, the hatchback is always a super wonderful, versatile
Yeah.
cargo carrying.
Yeah.
I'd say
car.
the hatch
So-
is probably better for a younger person just because the way they designed it,
Yeah.
the cargo space, it's they gave it extra volume by going like under the floor of
Yeah, it's
very
deep.
low,
it's
very
very
deep.
yeah,
Yep.
right. So we happened to have the Ioniq 5 in the shop at the same time, and I had pulled in and I opened up both because I was like, this looks weird to me when I looked in the back of the Niro, and I realized why. It was because I'm used to the cargo space being kind of flat and going further like deeper into the vehicle, right? So it's like they took that extra volume of going deeper into the vehicle and like put it underneath. And so you have a lower well,
Right.
which could be really good, like, depending on what you need to carry. I don't necessarily have a great bag. So I like to be able to put things
Slide
in and
it out.
slide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
It
you're
Whereas
right.
like
It
if
is
you have
low
like
for that.
heavier stuff and you're having to like really lift it up out, that might be
lift
harder.
over. We used to
Yeah.
measure lift over,
Right.
even of trunks, but that's where that lift,
Yeah.
that's
So
there.
ergonomically,
it's a
I'm not
good 6
sure.
to 8 inches down over that where it closes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it would be like where you would normally keep the spare.
Right.
And so I think you checked, right?
Yeah, there's room for a spare, but ours came with a inflator
Inflation
kit,
kit.
but it's
A
there.
spare? What's a spare? Yeah.
Spare tire. Yeah, I think maybe some of that is a product of basically the floor is from the Elantra, right? So it's as low as a sedan, a small car would be, and then you get the tall hatchback shape, so you just end up with this
This is where
column
you-
of space as opposed to
They just extruded the Elantra's
Kind of.
trunk.
yeah, you just pull it up, right? But the seats do fold, and it kind of makes a flat floor. It's not super flat, but
Yeah.
so you can get some more depth that way as well.
The other thing that I noticed, we talk a lot in our like safety evaluations or our safety discussions about like how vehicles are really kind of optimized for the 50th percentile male. And, in case you can't tell since I'm sitting down, like I'm not really that dimension. I'm not particularly tall. So I had to make a lot of adjustments to my driving position in order to like see over the dash well, reach my pedals, all that good jazz, right? And as a result, like it was so awkward for me because I went to rest my my right arm on the center console, but because I had to move the seat so far forward, my elbow just kept falling off it.
Emily was driving
and I was
like
like, like it just kept slipping forward anytime I like reached for the shifter or reached for anything. And I was like, gosh, I really wish that they had extended the center console.
Yeah.
And
You'll
you-
see them slide
It's like a
occasionally.
little short little.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this clearly was not optimized for my demographic.
Right.
You know?
But that's the value of what we do is it goes from you
Right.
could be in it and Emily could be in it the next day and you're just fine, but you're sliding off the armrest. And the value of the test drive.
Right.
Make sure when you're looking for a car that everybody who's going to drive it gets in it and does that stuff. 'Cause
Yep.
Right. Because all those things will matter, even like
The livability.
the falling into the car because
Yeah.
of how low it is, or like those kinds of things matter a lot on your day to day, depending on like your height and just even like your health. And I liked that I had Nemo. I had to bring Nemo to the office that day when I did my drive, so I had to put his car seat in. And I really liked how wide the doors opened. It gave great access, especially with his big clunky convertible car seat.
Right.
Some cars I'm like having to like do a little bit of aerobics trying to manipulate the car seat inside, and this was like so much easier because it had nice wide access.
Yeah, they
So-
open almost 90 degrees, I think, in the back there.
It's amazing how
Yeah.
just that little bit more of angle
Oh my
can
gosh.
make all the difference.
It really does.
And
So-
another day-to-day thing, I'm glad you said that. And I think, again, some of it might be because it's part Elantra in some ways, but the steering column, I don't know if either of you found this, but I had to tilt it up into this like bus-like position because effectively it's at the same height as in a small car, but then the seat's higher, so you end up having to tilt it up. So like the posture of my hands and wrists on the wheel is just not
Flatter.
and that's totally a preference thing, but just to your point about test driving it and seeing what's comfortable.
And it's funny you say that because that's how I like to drive. Very close, not flat, but not
more of an angle up.
It's appropriate. But again, I have short legs like you, so I'm typically much closer.
Yeah.
Than
Newsflash,
like
Alex, you're also not the 50th percentile male.
Was not designed for me.
No, it's really not.
Somewhere in the middle.
Right.
Somewhere in the middle. And of course, Kias are typically known for their value when you can get them. I know there's some issues with supply chain. So the range for the Kia Niro hybrid, about 26,000 to 44, depending on how you equip it. Ours was an EX trim, stickered for $30,600, including destination charge. So again, maybe a good value for a young driver, as I mentioned. So, and we will give you final test results of that, as well as future test results of the Kia Niro EV 2023 that we will be buying in the future. So moving on to our question of the week, talking cars at iCloud.com. Keep them coming. We actually have a great video question this week from Elliot in Minneapolis. Take a listen.
Hello, Talking Cars. I bought a Kia Telluride a couple of years ago, right before they got really popular. And my question is more related to the sort of quote unquote service schedule of newer vehicles. I've been bringing it back pretty faithfully to the dealership for the oil changes and whatever else maybe is involved in a service like that. But recently I've found that it's very difficult to actually get into these dealerships. And so I've been thinking about just bringing my vehicle in for oil changes at just a local shop where I can get in easily. And with two busy boys at home, I'm just wondering if there's any issues with taking newer vehicles to sort of off-brand or off the dealership lots, and if there's anything that I would be missing in terms of service by doing that, and if there's any issues with resale value if I were to have it serviced at just some random spot that has a drive-through and it's quick. Thanks, guys. Love the show.
I think this is a great question from Elliot, and I have a great story to go with it. But we got a lot of great advice from our two mechanics, John and our new mechanic, Mike, on this question. I just have a great story which totally relates to Elliot, and this happens to be Ford, not Kia. But my husband, again, has this relatively new Ford F-150, and the dealership we bought it from promises lifetime oil changes.
Nice.
So great perk.
Yeah.
I will say the dealership is not in our backyard. It's about a 45-minute drive. He has yet to be able to schedule an appointment within a month of when he's reaching the mileage, because it's hard to gauge when you reach your mileage or your service intervals. But he has yet been able to take advantage of this free oil change for life. Unfortunately, you just can't schedule an appointment around it. So I think it's not just Kia.
Right. Is he just taking it somewhere else then? An independent?
Yep.
Okay.
He is.
Just like Elliot.
So to Elliot's point, he is taking it to an independent dealer. Right. But maybe start with you, Alex. John and Mike gave us a ton of points, and I have some stuff too.
Yeah. First off, it's definitely okay to use an independent shop, especially for something routine like an oil change, or even some other basic service. But you just want to make sure that it's a reputable shop and maybe not just like something random you've never heard of, or more importantly, find a shop that's local to you that you can kind of build a relationship with. But ultimately, it's absolutely okay to use them. Especially to your point, you don't always know when that oil change service interval is coming up. Right. So you can't just schedule it for 2 or 3 months away. So you might need to
and then cram all your miles in. Be like,
or stop driving the car because you don't want to overdo the oil or the mileage
I'm
on it.
way over. My family gets crazy. I'm way over. I got to do it. Maybe I made them do that.
But you definitely just want to make sure they're using the right oil, OEM parts where possible, things like that, right? But there is still a lot of value in going to the dealership because the dealership and the techs there more specifically know these vehicles so well compared to an independent shop that's seeing all different types and brands of cars, right?
Yep.
So when you bring your Telluride there, they're going to know exactly what it should drive like, sound like, all these things, right?
Yeah.
And they're going to know what to check for. You might go in for an oil change, right? But they're going to look at everything else. And if you're following the service manual or the schedule in your owner's manual, they're going to know how to check all those other things beyond just the oil change. So I think there is still value, especially if, Elliot, you are following that schedule when you get to ones that are more major. Maybe like timing belts and spark plugs. Not that the independent shop can't do that,
right?
But it might be valuable to try to schedule those more in-depth services.
The other thing that they mentioned too is, and it's when you're in the dealership, any outstanding recalls.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you haven't
Totally.
done them, they're going to be able to say, oh, this
100%.
needs that, and just take care of it right then and there.
And to piggyback on that,
yeah.
the other thing that they can do is any software updates.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
So
The rolling computer idea. Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
you know.
Your iOS. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So our vehicles involve so much more software now these days. And that's not necessarily things that a local shop might have access to. They might. So it's worthwhile to ask, which is what Mike said. But, you know, a dealership will definitely have access to those.
Right. And the downloads. Yep. Yep. One of the things too, there are some DIY things for sure, but it's getting to the point where it depends on the car. I mean, we've seen so many cars, even when we do the headlight alignments, like the whole engine's covered. It's all under these fancy
can't
covers.
access
Can't
anything.
access anything, be it an oil filter, to Elliot's point, or a cabin air filter. Yet there's other cars. We again, going back to our own personal story, we got charged, this is the dealer caution I will give. You're at the dealer, they come out and say, hey, while we have it on the lift, do you want us to grab the cabin air filter and do this and this? And then you get the bill. The cabin air filter, if you go down to your local auto parts store, is $12 or $20, whatever it is. But it's the labor. And they charge you a minimum of a quarter of an hour on that labor at upwards of $110, $125 an hour.
Absolutely.
So things, again, it's about getting to know your car, because many times both the engine air filter and the cabin air filter are really easy to do. But when you do it at the dealership and they've now tacked it on, even though it's on the lift already, can be a lot more. I think we paid $95 for a $21 air filter.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. And to Elliot's other part of his question about the impacting the resale value, I think on most normal vehicles, I'll put it that way, it doesn't really matter whether you have records from going to the dealer versus an independent shop. It's more that you have done it and you can prove it.
Right. The
So
records.
just keep the records, regardless of where they're from. I mean, you start to get into like collector cars and things like that, where people want to see like, oh, it's dealer maintained, or you have every single thing. Maybe less important.
Right.
But yeah, just keeping those records regardless of whether they're independent or from the dealership.
I've been trying to get my kids, who are now driving their own vehicles, to get in the habit of keeping all their receipts and keeping a little folder in their glove box of oil changes and tire changes and brake changes.
How are they doing on that?
Not real well. Mom's kind of guiding a little bit, but yeah.
If you know Jen, she's like the queen of paper. So I can
It's an old school.
I can only imagine that she's telling her children to save paper.
But honestly, maybe in a resale, paper's a good thing.
It's true.
Could be.
It could be.
Right.
You're making a comeback.
I'm making a comeback. The paperless society is gone. No. So excellent question, Elliot. Again, keep them coming. talkingcars@icloud.com. We thank you for joining us. This episode was produced by David Abrams and filmed by Andrew Belize and Anatoly Shopsky. So we'll see you next week, and keep on talking cars.